Hey young friends, Dr. Bill here. As you know, over the last several weeks we have been paying attention to Jesus' disciples. We have identified several of them about whom we know something from the New Testament. And we've tried to understand who they were, what they were like, and some lessons that we can learn from who they were and what they did. Today we're going to take a look at Jesus' most infamous disciple, that is, Judas Iscariot. Now, all four Gospels tell us that Judas was a part of Jesus' circle of friends. Here's what we know. Judas was indeed one of the 12. He was in that close circle of friends that Jesus surrounded himself with, and it was to those 12 that Jesus gave lots and lots of time and attention. So in this way, Judas had lots of time to hear what Jesus said. He had a lot of time to see the things that Jesus did. Probably had many occasions where he and Jesus were involved in some good conversation. And since Jesus sent his disciples out on mission, we have no doubt that Judas was one of those who went out with another disciple, and they began to preach and to cast out demons and to do many of the same things that they had seen Jesus do. That's pretty positive. But somewhere along the line, things began to change. We can see a shift happening in the writer's description of who Judas was. The first comes when Jesus is at a dinner, and while he is dining, a lady comes into the room and breaks off the top of a jar of very expensive perfume. And she anoints Jesus' feet with it. She pours it all out, holding back nothing. Well, Judas sees this and he makes a protest. He says, why did we waste this perfume? Why was it not sold? We could have gotten a lot of money for it, and then we could have given it to the poor. Now that sounds great, doesn't it? Well, one of the gospel writers tells us that Judas was not so well motivated. He did this, or he said this, because he was a thief, and he stole money from the disciples' common purse, from the money they shared together. That's kind of the first hint, that we have that Judas is beginning to change. Now, eventually we know that Judas is the one who betrayed Jesus into the hands of the authorities so that Jesus could be arrested and crucified. Now, we're not told exactly what motivated him. We can make some guesses. Somewhere along the line, perhaps Judas became aware that Jesus and he were after different things. Jesus was focused on the kingdom of God, and it would be very different from an earthly kingdom. Jesus would not rule as a strong, powerful military ruler would, and instead Jesus would be the Prince of Peace, the one who rules by doing justice and mercy and kindness. Well, perhaps that's what Judas began to disagree with Jesus very strongly about. Remember, Judas's last name is Iscariot, which may denote a town from which Judas was from. It also may be a description of the kind of knife he carried, symbolizing that Judas was a zealot. He was one of those people who was determined to overthrow Roman rule over the Jewish people. So perhaps Judas recognized that Jesus was going in a different direction, and he wanted nothing more to do with it, and decided that he would sell Jesus out to get something for his time and effort. Or maybe it's Judas wanted to force Jesus to do something. Perhaps, as I said, Judas was thinking that Jesus was going to be one kind of king. And as the disciples and Jesus were in Jerusalem, he decided he would set up a confrontation where Jesus would be forced to act. And his idea may have been that he would hope that Jesus would respond with power and might and do the things that he thought a king should do. The simplest explanation is what one gospel writer gives us, simply saying that Satan entered Judas. Judas's bad side got the best of him, and as a result, he sold Jesus out. Now, as the story goes, Judas went to the religious authorities and said, if you'll give me some money, I'll be glad to tell you where Jesus is, when he will be there, and then you can come arrest him. That sounded like a deal to them, and so they gave Judas 30 pieces of silver. And from then on, Judas was looking for an opportunity to set Jesus up and to betray him. That opportunity came on the night of the Passover, and after the meal, the disciples retired to the Garden of Gethsemane. Unfortunately, Judas had slipped away from the group. He found the religious leaders. They gathered some soldiers, and then they went to where Jesus was. He was in the Garden of Gethsemane. And since not everybody knew Jesus on sight, Judas had decided that he would identify Jesus for the authorities. And so he went up to Jesus, called him Rabbi, which means teacher, and then kissed him on the cheek, a typical form of greeting. Think of that. Judas betrayed Jesus by doing one of the most intimate things we can ever do, and that is to kiss another person. Well, from that, Jesus was indeed arrested, he was tried, and he was crucified. Somewhere in that drama, Judas apparently had a change of mind and a change of heart. He went back to the religious authorities, gave them back the money, and said, I have done something terribly, terribly wrong. This was the worst thing I could have done. The religious authorities kind of dismissed him, and as a result, Judas was so grief-stricken that he took his own life. Very tragic and very, very sad. Well, there are a few things that we can learn from Judas. First is that no matter how close we are to Jesus, all of us can still fail him. No matter how deep our faith, no matter how hard we work at following him, we can still do something that shows that we're really not fully committed to Jesus, or we can do something that puts Jesus in a bad light. All of us can fail Jesus. The second thing is this. Judas sold Jesus out for 30 pieces of silver. That tells me that every one of us has a price. If the money or whatever we're seeking gets to be a means or a way of getting something we want, sometimes we can abandon the things that we hold dear, our values, our character, you name it. We can sell our souls thinking that we're going to get something else in return. Judas shows us that our lives shouldn't be up for sale. The things that matter the most to us, we shouldn't be thinking about how we can sell those things short or sell them out. Well, that's the story of Judas. As always, if you have any questions or you want to talk about it, you know how to get in touch with me. In the meantime, I hope you're having a great week, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.